Hello, Wealth of Health newsletter readers. Welcome to the June edition. Did you know it's National Safety Awareness Month? And as a result, we're going to interview Nick Royston of the Risk Management Department, and he's going to share with us a lot of tips about safety in the workplace. In addition to Nick's information, I would like to share with you some back care prevention techniques that, if practiced, can really reduce your risk of injuring yourself at work and while out at play. And now I'd like to introduce Nick Royston of our Risk Management Department so he could share with you some great information about being safe in the workplace.
Hi, my name is Nick Royston. I am the Loss Prevention Specialist and I've been with the company for 14 years. This month is the National Safety Council's National Safety Awareness Month, and I wanted to take this opportunity to bring just a few points that will help keep our employees and customers a little more safer throughout the dealerships. A lot of these tips are going to be geared towards parts and service, but our sales and administration staff can definitely benefit from them as well. From keeping our office spaces clean to lifting that heavy ream of paper, you can benefit just as much. And we want to make sure that we're wearing the proper personal protective equipment. We're wearing work gloves to avoid cuts and burns, and we're wearing nitrile gloves to avoid chemical burns. We also want to make sure that we're using fresh, clean blades in our box cutters. A fresh blade is going to have a sharp edge that's going to glide through the material that you're trying to cut, whereas a dull blade is going to require more force, and when it does let loose, increase the odds that you're going to incur an accidental cut. The next thing we want to make sure is we're aware of our hand placement. If we're driving a part in with a hammer or a mallet, make sure we're keeping our hands out of the path of danger. When using hand tools, we're exposing more than just our hands to potential injury. We want to make sure that when we're using grinders or air hammers that we're wearing safety glasses to avoid any material from flying into our eyes. And good housekeeping will greatly reduce slips and falls. Making sure that we're keeping our work areas clean, swept, free of debris, and picking up any spills as soon as possible and make sure that our customers and employees have a safe space to walk through. Always take extra care when using ladders and step stools. We want to make sure that they have sure footing and aren't going to slip out from underneath of us when we're standing on top of them. And having proper footwear not only reduces the likelihood of slipping, but it also increases support and traction whenever walking over uneven surfaces.
So next we want to talk about lot safety. The dealerships have been seeing a lot more traffic lately, and some of our stores have been going through remodels, which has only increased the amount of congestion that we've faced. One of the first things we want to make sure we're doing is performing a 360 walk around. Whenever you walk up to a vehicle, before you get in the driver's seat to take off, you want to walk around 360 degrees and check everything going on around the vehicle. If you see any fixed objects, a fire hydrant, a sign, make sure you put your hand on there and create that tactile memory. That'll help recall when you get back into that driver's seat and you get ready to take off. And with that increased congestion, we want to make sure that we're maintaining a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout the lots. With the increase in traffic from employees and customers and the amount of blind spots that most of the dealerships are working with, the slower speed limit's going to give us more chance to react should someone pop out from a drive that we didn't see before. The next thing you want to do is make sure you're using a spotter whenever needed. If you're driving a bigger vehicle or you're trying to pull a vehicle out of a tight spot with some obstacles in the way and you're not too sure you're going to make it, grab a coworker. Grab somebody to give you a hand. Make sure they're seeing the things that you can't, guide you through the spot. The extra time it takes to grab somebody to help you out saves the time it would take to report the claim. And last thing we want to talk about is avoiding distractions, especially cell phone use. We want to make sure that we're using hands-free devices every time we get behind the wheel of a car. Put the cell phone down and don't answer any texts or phone calls until you're safely pulled over.
Hey Nick, thanks for all that great information. I truly appreciate it. And honestly, we're all in this together. If we can minimize cuts, if we can reduce trips and falls and slips and burns in the workplace, we're all going to be better off for it. And with that, I'd like to share with you some additional information how you can take care of your back and strengthen your core and reduce your risk of hurting yourself at the workplace or even while you're out having some fun. Believe it or not, the best way to avoid hurting your back is through prevention. Developing your core and strengthening your midsection as well as your back really reduces the likelihood of injuring yourself. So things like crunches and low back extensions, sitting lunges, stretching. A lot of these things can really strengthen your back and your core. And what I mean by core is your midsection, your abdominals, your obliques, as well as your low back. And when those are in top-notch gear, your likelihood of injuring yourself goes way down. Something else to consider to avoid hurting your back has a lot to do when you're lifting and picking things up. You should never ever lift anything up with your legs locked or your knees locked. You should always bend your knees and try to lift with your legs. A really good way to injure yourself is to lean forward, have a weight far out in front of you, and then try to stand up. That's a bona fide guaranteed way to hurt your back. Another way is very commonly you may be getting out of your car and lifting while twisting can also injure yourself. And in addition to that, sitting in your chair with bad posture can also injure your back. Okay, here is a kneeling lunge. And the reason you kneel is for balance. And then the reason that you lean forward is to stretch out your hip flexor, which is on the front of your leg. And very commonly, back pain, back strains are as a result of a misalignment between the strength of the back and the weakness of the hip flexor. So by stretching the hip flexor, it helps to align with the strength of the back. This exercise is called low back protraction. And the idea is to arch your low back in an opposite direction of how it normally is when you're walking. So you take the arch out of your low back and push your low back into the ground, and that lengthens out your back muscles. And this exercise is a hamstring stretch. Again, a big reason for low back pain is tight hamstrings, where the quadricep, which is on the front of your leg, is stronger than the muscles on the back of your leg, your hamstrings. So by stretching them out, you again develop an equality of strength between the two muscles, and that takes less wear and tear on your back. This exercise is a quadricep stretch, and the key to this really is not pulling back on your ankle, but actually pushing your hip forward. And doing so will put a nice stretch on your quadricep and again reduce the likelihood of the differentiation of strength between the hamstring and the quad, which leads to low back pain. This exercise is called a glute stretch for your gluteus maximus. That's an anatomical name for your backside. But it also is an excellent stretch to reduce the likelihood of low back pain. And anytime that you do stretch, I want to make sure that you hold the stretch for at least 10 to 15 seconds. I know in this video it's a little shorter than that, but try to hold each stretch for at least 10 to 15 seconds. I call this particular exercise side to side for obvious reasons. And the one thing I want to make sure to point out on this one is that if you do twist, only go as far as it is pain-free range of motion. If you have anything that starts to hurt, don't go beyond that particular range of motion. Stop there and then swing back to the other side. Now, I'd like to say a little bit about taking care of your back. Heaven forbid that you do injure yourself, but if you do, here's a couple of tips to think about. Number one, most soft tissue injuries will heal themselves within about 7 to 10 days. If it goes longer than that, it's probably a good idea to check in with a medical physician and see if there's something wrong with the skeletal structure or something more relevant than just a soft tissue injury. In addition, believe it or not, sleeping can also injure your back. Sleeping on your stomach, for example, is not really advised if you have a back problem, more so on your side, and even using a pillow between your knees will help to keep your spine in alignment and reduce the risk of hurting yourself while you're sleeping. And I'd like to leave you with one thing. Very commonly, back pain or injuries are treated with pharmaceutical drugs, opiate-based medicines, and those kind of scare me a little bit because you can get chemically dependent on them. And one of the best ways, like I said to start the presentation, to avoid injuring yourself is prevention. So having a strong core, being physically fit, being active, and doing things for yourself from a physical fitness standpoint really can't do anything but help your long-term health, especially when low back care is involved. Well, that'll do it for the June edition of the Wealth of Health newsletter. And again, thank you to Nick Royston for coming and giving us some great information on the risk management side of things. We'll see you in July.